Thanks. So this is Simon with Trade and Perform Coaching Derek asked a question about how I set up. We just pulled off a 30 to 75, 55 cent CL short with multiple scales in and out. And Derek had wrote, his specific question was to me. So I said, Simon, can you review what we did versus did not have in your favor off of that CL trade? I did not take it because the left shoulder had no fractal on top. Thank you. Okay, so I'm answering Derek's question, then I'm going to incorporate what Bill had to say in it. So, number one, let's start off with, if you see me moving screens around and yapping and drawing and you can't hear me, something's wrong, right? So if you hear me, so let's start off with this. Number one, let's start from the day time frame, right? So from the day time frame, we had CL. Okay, so number one, we don't have a head and shoulder. We have a short head and shoulders over here. This being your left shoulder, head, backside test, and we have a potential left shoulder over here, but no head to work against unless there's something I've missed off to the left, and there's not. We simply don't have a head. So here, see how this could have been your left shoulder here? Right shoulder holds. And then your... Oh, before I get started on this, past performance is not indicative of future results. There's substantial risk in trading futures. You can lose your backside. Make sure you have a trading plan, as I do and most everyone in the room does. Right? If you take your time, you can build significant P&L into your trading day and into your work weeks. Right? So when you see this here, this is A, B, right? This is A, B, and C, and it held this left shoulder, right? So what you'll notice here is we don't have that, right? You just simply try to do a double bottom. So this would be a potential left shoulder, except we didn't really pierce underneath the bottom. Man, this thing sucks. And so I don't count that as a head and shoulder. I really would have wanted a pierce. So I'm going to work off of this to set up a head and shoulders to the upside. I don't think we're there yet. I think we make one more push underneath, at least test these two naked volume points of control underneath, and then we can push back up. And you can see we have an overall downtrend from the top. And also we have, right, so you're just stacking stuff together so you make an argument for your trade. Right, and we came right into the 50-60 from swing high to swing low and rejecting out of that. That's what we did yesterday. Right, so all of that argues for a potential roll to the downside. Right, so next, that's step one. And then we had the volume build. So I knew this 54.26 to 54.48 was a volume build off the volume profile. There's nothing there really on the TPO. On the volume profile there was. Right? So I already knew this is an area, plus you got the railroad tracks on the 5 minutes. 0 to 10 railroad tracks in terms of importance and weighting. 2.5 out of 10 points, right? It's just, oh, there that is. Let's see if we can set up the rest of it. It's not an automatic, right? So then... Right, let's go to the let's go to the 30 range. Right, that's the next step in the process. And on the 30 range, right, we did not have. So I would have liked to have used this for a left shoulder, but as Derek rightly pointed out, I don't like to use it when there's no fractal. There's no fractal here, right? But there is a fractal here, and now we get a fractal way up here. So now I have the potential head and shoulders over here if I close back in underneath. And you'll notice, as I pointed out to a lot of guys that I'm coaching, if you use the algo, if you shift back in to your last fractal, which is also can be potentially left shoulder, that if it'll hold just that bar, you can often get really fat rolls to the downside, right? So that works on the 30 as well as it does on the 9. Okay, range bars is what I'm referring to. Next, if you look from that swing high to this swing low, we came right into 50-60 retrace, right? In a product that's in an overall downtrend, right? And the The last piece is we came and backside tested the last speed bar fractal up, which is powerful, and it rejected out of that. So we could have hypothetically just taken 54.40 against 54.60, which is where we were shorting anyways, because we were really just working this fractal, you could argue at the end of the day, right, to get the roll back to the downside. And my figuring was we need to get underneath this in order to get any kind of trap, or we need to come and fix up this fractal down over here, one of the two. Of course, I'm totally flat, so if it comes and fixes that fractal, that'll go under suck, but I couldn't get it to break faster, and covering into London close isn't a horrible idea, especially given the PA was a little bit funky today, right? So, and on top of that, if I look from yesterday, we just squeezed behind the 62 retrace. It held the first time. They're trying to get behind it the second time. I gotta tell you, if we impulse move below that 62, like this, the backside test in this area should have sellers because people are going to try and buy that to get the counter rotation back up, and it's clearly failed. They've gotten behind that 50-60 at this point, and that often leads to very nice stretches back to the downside. Again, I don't have any position right now. I'll come back and kind of hunt that later today if it gives me anything to London close, but I've been paid for the day nicely, so I don't have a whole lot of motivation for trying to press my trade at this point. And this was an effort, a very big effort that I was trying to get done. So the left shoulder, Derek, to answer your question, the left shoulder came off the 30 range to answer that question at 55.60. So hopefully that answers it for you where I was working it off of. But even if you didn't use that, right? So let's go down to the range that we're actually working off of and go to a 9 range over here. And if I go to a 9 range, right? So if I look at it on the time frame that I'm working, I'm going to do the waves last, right? If I go to a time frame that I'm actually working, what I'm going to want is a fractal right over here, and I simply didn't have it. I want the fractal there, so that's clearly a head and shoulders, right? It's just a head and shoulders without a fractal, and I want the fractal because it increases the odds that I'm correct. Here's the right shoulder, right, left shoulder. So, how do you fix that problem? Or because it's not there, right? So you got to go back and look to the left, right? And what you'll see is we had a series of 3 fractals right through here, right? And that's what's ended up. So the answer to that is your fractal, you can see it on the 30 range, but it's also going to 10 in the morning. Yesterday, we pierced above, big wave above, and you got that pyramid structure, which I like. And then you got the big press to the downside, but it got absorbed. So I forgot my structure in order here, right? Because I need to see that initial push back down, and then we're pressing back into the left shoulder over here, right? It's just really stretched out. Bill, do you have something to add to that? This one right here, Bill, from 837. You're going to count this one right here. Okay, they both qualify, so that's fine. So, and Bill's pointing out that yesterday the biggest push down occurred right there, and we pushed right up into it. So thank you, Bill. I missed that. All right, but either one would have qualified, right? So had we gotten above 54.80, that would have trapped everyone who sold below and short squeezed back to the upside. Bill's still typing, so let's see what he has to add. I'll look in a second. So that was the additional piece of information, was the biggest wave down from yesterday. We pushed right up into the back of it, right, and rejected. So that's the structure that we were working against, right? So the speed bar shift down worked for the fractal. Got it. So now, once we were into the biggest wave, Bill was working off the speed bar shift down. And so here's the deal with this, right? When you do this, everyone's got to come up with a way they can understand in their head how that structure works, right? For me, right, I prefer, and this is where Derek's coming from, I prefer that the left shoulder with a fractal form in a time and a space that's close by. But I know that's a key area, right? I have a volume build. I have the biggest push down to the left, which I neglected to notice. Bill pointed it out, right? And so this ended up being, right, this over here ended up sufficing for a push above. All this pushed down and pushed down into this biggest wave off to the left and made this my left shoulder, right? But you've got to be able to visualize it, practice it enough, and work through someone who knows how to set them up so that you got all those pieces going in one place, right? And then if you take the additional piece, if you have a prolonged fractal trend line up, they got clearly broken, right? And then if you look at the next piece, so what we're looking for is wave down over wave down uninterrupted, right? So that would have been, this came in a weird place and I forgot a step. In order to get the roll down, you'll often get a big push to the downside, right? And then it'll come back and test the left shoulder after that. And I forgot about that because that's exactly what we got here. And they attempted to push above. And notice when we finally got them trapped up here, they made this giant push. It's actually, I think arguably, correctly so, the biggest momentum push of the morning, right? So if you'll notice why that's important, looking at it in the rearview mirror, right? So we were already short in there anyways, right? But if you look at that, that's an enormous amount of push. So look at past pushes, right? Look how much return on investment they got for the amount of delta they put in. Look at the amount of return they're getting for their delta. Look at the amount of return, a lot of return, right? For ease of movement relative to the amount of input they're putting in on the balance of positive and negative delta. Well, you get this huge push right at 935 and nothing, right? Like it's almost literally nothing. So then look how they did that. They put in a fractal here, and I said what we need to release is we got to get underneath here. So what I had to do is hold my breath and hope that 5450 left shoulder from back over there held. And remember I said you can move your stop to 5441 net break even because we've taken a couple scales in and out, but your risk is that you're going to get one last little gasp of air. They're going to run your stop, take you out. And I said, therefore, I'm leaving my stop at 5450 because if I get a point of control above that left shoulder, I've got to close the trade out. Regardless of how it works out, I'll be busted at that point, right? And then once we release below these two, you get long liquidation, which is how it's supposed to work. And now you have wave down, wave down. So guess what? I will probably be shorting my first shift down right there between 5420 and 5440. I'm either going to outright short 5420 against 5445, or I'm going to wait for my first shift down out of that area. But that created the release once we got underneath these fractals, right? That created the release and the long liquidation to the downside, which is exactly what we wanted. So now we had the attempt at the selling that got absorbed. We come back and test the left shoulder. The variable here is sometimes on this left shoulder, you don't get the retest, right? It comes in, forms, and you just get a lower high. And that was a potential lower high right there, right? That was a potential lower high. And what had to happen is we had to hold these fractals. They didn't do it the first time. Then they finally make the last gasp. That part is variable. Sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't, right? So you have to be willing to understand the structure and the nature of both those trades. What we do normally get before we get a big roll down is it's very common to get wave one, wave two with an extension. And now if you can get a backside test of wave one right in there, it's almost always good for at least a scalp. And quite often that backside test is the beginning of the end where you get a extended and prolonged roll to the downside. So I can tell you right now, I am hunting this 5415 to 5440 area, and I'm either going to use a shift down or just an outright backside test of those fractals in that area and try to get a continued push, because ultimately my goal, right, if I look at my profile, is so now we've pushed down into this anomaly. So my ultimate goal will be to push down to 5360, 58, and if I get really lucky, 5340, 5433, or break this swing low at 5320. I don't know if we can do that. That was the biggest downside move of the day. That may have exhausted, right? So I'll be patient and just see if I can't get the setup back in here in this 5416 to 5440 location for maybe a retest of the low, and if I get lucky, it extends down to 5430 area, right? So that's how you set that up, right? So let's discuss the real hard part of that trade, right? was one, if you're trading one contract, it's hard to hold that. If you're trading two, you got scales, right? So even before we got this break, with one contract, due to our entries and scales, so on and so forth, we had moved our 54.30 entry back to 54. We had 26 ticks, and then we had another 20. So before this break came here, and I added back again at 54.30. Before I got that, I already had moved my stop back, my average on a half size back to 54. Whatever it was, 54.30 plus 26, 54.56, right? My stop was 54.50. So on half size, I had a free ride, right? On full size, I ended up with a net 7-cent loss if I had those scales, if I had gotten tagged out, right? And then I took another scale over here at 54.20 again. So it was 36 to 20, added another 16 cents. I had 26, 36, 42 cents, whatever it was, 43 cents. So it came up to 43 cents. So now if I take the 54.30 on half size, I had the 43 cents. That's 54.75 or 76 with a stop at 54.51. It was a guaranteed free ride, so I could relax and wait for this to come back. But the really hard part was, you got to remember, I started working this trade inside of this location and just scaling in and scaling out. And what was frustrating me is, because I trade two markets, is I didn't get set up on ES. I wanted it, but we got the wave down and the second wave down, but there's no extension here on this wave down, wave down. And I didn't take the short. I was hunting it. I thought it was short. I just couldn't get the rotation, and this is all chop, right? But by the time I'm working that short, I'm seeing how far ES is extending to the downside, right? Which is really, quite frankly, frustrating me. Like, that's a nice fat trade. That was 20 points on ES, almost $1,000 a contract. And I didn't have anything on, right? And I could have taken, just once we got underneath this wave, I could just simply shorted and use that whole wave as my stop. But I was looking for something specific. I was looking for this, but with some extension underneath, and I didn't get it. So I didn't take it, which is all right. But I'm human. I'm still like, shit, I wish that would have worked out, right? So now, when I'm over here, I've got everything else except the two waves down. I just don't get it lined up over here. So see, when it finally gives it, it's all the way after we've already extended down. You don't get any kind of impulse move below wave 1 versus wave 2. So it's really a wave within a wave. There's nothing there. They press back up. Now we have it. See this? Now we have extension, wave 1, wave 2. And now when I come back into that 54.20 to 54.40, I will, or I do want to attack that location if the market will give it to me, right? If the market will give it to me, I want that location so I can press to the downside. And that's what I'm looking for now. So, but here's the cool part, right? I've had a killer day P&L wise, right? Because I worked that half size trade in and out multiple times, and I kept my core and pushed on it, and then I covered in the London close. And the other thing that you have to acknowledge, so the last piece on this, that took me a lot of work, right? I worked this trade up here. I actually started over here working this trade. Bill started working it over here. But I spent from 9 a.m., right, all the way over to 10, 11, intensely trying to figure out this process, dealing with frustration from not being able to hook up the ES trade. And so I'm tired now is what I'm trying to point out, right? I'm just trying to point out that it's important. This part is important. Why is it important? Because my natural target, there's two things that I'm susceptible to. I feel like I should have gotten paid in ES. So, and this happens to a lot of people. I know it's not me alone, at least. I know it happens to a lot of traders that I coach, traders that I know that are professional traders, right? So I can go, it'd be really easy to switch my mindset into going, well, yeah, I got paid on CL and that's all cool, but I got screwed on ES because the price action didn't lay out properly, right? That would be a big deal, right? And I would be susceptible to that because I have a character flaw in my trading, which is I lack gratitude for the P&L I do make or how well I execute a trade, and I have an underlying, the market owes me when it doesn't give me the trade, the market owes me, and a little bit of a Superman complex. I don't say that to be funny or cute or anything else. It makes me susceptible to revenge trading and to thinking, even though I just had a monster day in CL, that the market owes me more money. So instead of stopping and going, hey, it's 11:18 a.m., I've had a great morning. I've even had a great day. Arguably, anyone would say that was a great day, right? I'm pretty sure people would kill to make that kind of money in a month, much less a day, from what my P&L was, right? Or even some people in a year, possibly, right? But I am susceptible to going, you know what? The market still owes me more money because it should have given me the setup in ES as well, and I didn't get it. Or I should have known to take underneath the biggest wave. I should have known that, right? Or it took too long and I couldn't focus on my ES setups, right? And all of that is bullshit. But it exists in my head, right? And I've been following Dr. Steenbarger and his. The reason I know this exists and it's all in my head, that it's real, even though I'm the only one setting the bar. It's real, right? Because I've been following his journaling process daily, right? Spend 30 minutes a day minimum journaling about my trading, minimum. And I know that I am susceptible, even when I have a great day, to thinking that I have not been paid sufficiently by the market. Now, I don't know if that applies to anybody here besides me. It may not, right? But my instinct is, if you only had one contract and you didn't catch the whatever it was we got, the 55 cents, if you didn't catch all the scales because you were stuck and you just stuck the whole thing out and held your breath, if you got stopped at 54.41 because you didn't want to pay the 54.51 or 50 for the stop, right? You might be frustrated right now. But here's the key to this, of what I've learned from following this process, again, with Dr. Steenbarger, and adapting it and really being kind of militaristic about following the process, is that this trade repeats, right? It repeats long, it repeats short, it repeats almost daily, right? And that that if I keep focusing on that right shoulder, right? Again, keep focus on the right shoulder, I will get paid over and over again. If you keep focusing on that right shoulder, you will get paid over and over again. And what would be you would be in a difficult position if you try to recoup that money of what you psychologically should have had from trying to make it work now, when it's clearly, even though we have wide range, it's a slow, grindy range. Like, I can count the number of contracts going off in ES right now. That's how slow it is, right? So, right, what you do is you don't go back in and go, well, I can make that money up someplace else today. What you do is you go back and go, let me master what that process for entry is so I can catch that next time and make the 40 or 50 cents or 100 cents or whatever it is that we're going to capture the right way next time. And you look to improve or see what you didn't see or see how you would have adjusted so that over the course of 100 trades, you're capturing big in P&L and you don't feel like today is the day you have to capture it, right? That's the last piece I have to say about that. Now I want to cover what Bill pointed out over here real quick. Bill said, Simon, yesterday's biggest down wave ended 540, so the speed bar shift down work for the fractal for left. Okay, and then the other thing he's pointing out, so this is Bill's work. He's one of the members in the room. Okay, and he's showing the fractal trend line. He obviously had the biggest wave down marked off, and what he's seen is that fractal shift down right there was what he started working off the head, and what I was simply working was, I guess all of this is 54.30. So let me read what he wrote exactly to us, how he handled the trade. He goes, Simon, I waited until I had 2 downside fractals before I started to look short. Once I saw the biggest green wave of the day and a huge push on the last bar, I shorted 54.30 after the fractal speed bar shift down, covered into 54.20, re-shorted 54.30, covered for 12 cents, more size, and I'll be able to hold the trailer, which I agree with. Okay, so Bill has his own way of interpreting or reading that identical or same setup, right? And neither one of us are right or wrong, right? There's not a right way to do it. There's a way for you to do it. the right way. The overall plumbing and mechanics of that trade are the same. You need a left shoulder, a head, and a right shoulder. And now it's up to you. Yeah, okay, great. Thank you, Randy. So teamwork-wise, I thought we did a really good job. Right? The only thing you were missing, so to go all the way back to Derek's original question, the only thing you're missing is on the 9 range, was there was no fractal. And Derek, the easiest way to fix that would have been to come back over here, recognize that you were in the 50-60, and you had a fractal all the way up here from yesterday. And that's what the market was most likely working on the big picture. And on the small picture, there was a fractal somewhere in this area from yesterday, I think. Here, we'll shift off. And the only other way to have recognized that, because you're correct, intraday we didn't get the fractal there, would have been to come all the way back over here and figure out what the market's trying to use. And then the other big key is that up until this got printed, that was the biggest wave up. And once we got underneath that biggest wave up, that whole wave became resistance. So hopefully that answers everyone's questions. Does anyone else have anything to point out? Because I think we've slaughtered that horse. Going once, going twice, going 3 times. I'd say that was a pretty damn good morning. I'm sorry I didn't catch a yes, but it didn't set up the way I wanted it to. So that's the pain of following process. And if someone knows how to do that easier than that, please freaking dial me up. Okay. Going to shut her down for lunch then, guys. I don't have anything more valuable to add than that. Let's kill this recording. I'll post that up so everyone can review it later.